The whistle of the eastbound train cut through the cold morning air like a blade, sharp and final, and Clara Whitmore flinched as if it had called her name. Steam rose in thick white clouds, blurring the edges of the small Wyoming station and the life she was about to abandon. Her gloved fingers tightened around the leather handle of her suitcase, the only thing she owned that still felt solid. Behind her lay a town that had taken more from her than it had ever given. Ahead waited uncertainty, a city she barely knew, and a future she had convinced herself would be better simply because it would be somewhere else. Clara did not look back. She had learned that looking back was dangerous. It made the heart hesitate, and hesitation had cost her too much already. Just a few steps more, she told herself. Then the train, then gone. Clara, wait. The voice came rough and breathless, cutting through the noise of the station. She froze despite herself. Slowly, against every promise she had made to her own wounded heart, she turned. Ethan Cole stood at the far end of the platform, hat in his hand, boots dusted with dirt, chest rising and falling like he'd run all the way from the edge of town. He looked like the rest of him always did, broad-shouldered, sun-worn, and stubbornly alive, but there was something different in his eyes. Panic, maybe. Or hope. Or both tangled together so tightly they could no longer be told apart. Clara swallowed. Of all the people she had expected might try to stop her, Ethan Cole was the one she had feared the most. She had loved him once. And he had broken her without ever meaning to. "You're going to miss it," she said, her voice steady in a way she did not feel. "The train doesn't wait for anyone." "I know," he said, closing the distance between them. "That's why I'm here." She shook her head. "Don't, Ethan. Please. Don't make this harder." He stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could see the faint scar on his jaw and the worry lines etched deeper than they had been a year ago. "I'm not here to stop you," he said quietly. "Not like that." Her laugh came out sharp and bitter. "Then what are you doing here?" Ethan hesitated, and in that brief pause Clara saw something she had never seen before, a man unsure of his own strength. He took a breath, squared his shoulders, and looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. "I'm here to beg," he said. "For one chance." Clara Whitmore had come to Red Willow with dreams stitched together by hope and youth. She had been 22, freshly orphaned, and desperate for a place that would let her start over without asking too many questions. Red Willow had seemed perfect, small, quiet, and kind in the way towns pretended to be until you depended on them. She found work at the diner, pouring coffee and memorizing orders, smiling until her cheeks ached. That was where she met Ethan Cole for the first time. He came in every morning before dawn, boots heavy with mud, hat tipped low, ordering the same thing like it was a promise, black coffee and eggs over easy. He never rushed her, never raised his voice. When other men joked too loudly or looked at her too long, Ethan would clear his throat or shift his chair just enough to remind them she wasn't alone. He tipped well, too, though she suspected he did it without realizing it meant something. Their friendship grew slowly, like a fence built one post at a time. He fixed the loose step outside her rented room without being asked. She patched the tear in his coat while he waited awkwardly by the door. They talked about nothing and everything, about the way the plains looked at sunset, about dreams they weren't sure they were allowed to have. When Ethan finally kissed her, it was gentle and uncertain. As if he was afraid she might disappear if he touched her too boldly. Clara had cried afterward, overwhelmed by how safe it felt. For a while, happiness seemed almost easy. Then life reminded them both that easy things rarely last. Ethan had inherited the ranch after his father's sudden death, along with debts he didn't fully understand and responsibilities he wasn't ready for. Clara watched him change under the weight of it all, his laughter thinning, his silences stretching longer. He stopped coming by the diner as often. When he did, his eyes were always somewhere else, chasing problems she couldn't see. She tried to help. She offered her savings. She offered herself. But Ethan, proud and stubborn, refused in the way men sometimes do when they believe love is something they must protect from their own failures. "You deserve more than this," he had told her one night, standing in the doorway of her room. "More than waiting on a man who can't promise you anything." "I'm not asking for promises," Clara had said, tears burning her eyes. "I'm asking to stay." But Ethan had already decided. He pulled away, not because he didn't love her, but because he loved her and believed that was reason enough to let her go. The town watched, whispered, and moved on. Clara stayed until the loneliness became unbearable. Until every street corner carried a memory. Until she realized she was shrinking, folding herself smaller to fit a place that no longer felt like home. That was when she bought the ticket for the eastbound train. I don't have much time, Clara said now, standing on the platform with the past breathing down her neck. Say what you came to say. Ethan nodded. I will. He held out his hat, fingers gripping the brim like it was the only thing keeping him upright. I know I hurt you. I know I don't get to ask for anything after that. But I need you to know the truth, because I never told you before. Clara crossed her arms, guarding herself. The truth doesn't change anything. Maybe not, he said. But it might explain it. The train hissed, impatient. I pushed you away because I was scared, Ethan continued. Scared I'd ruin you. Scared I'd turn into my father, angry, bitter, always chasing a debt he could never pay. I thought if I let you go, you'd be safe. His voice broke, and he looked down at the wooden planks beneath their feet. But losing you didn't save me. It just showed me how empty everything else was. Clara felt her resolve waver, just a little. Ethan, I'm not asking you to stay forever, he said quickly, lifting his eyes to hers. I'm asking for one chance. One honest chance to show you I can be better than my fear. She shook her head. You had your chance. I know, he whispered. And I wasted it. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Around them, the world kept moving, porters shouting, passengers boarding, the train inching closer to departure. Clara's heart pounded. She had practiced this moment in her head 1,000 times, and in every version she walked away without looking back. But now, standing in front of a man who finally looked as vulnerable as she felt, certainty slipped through her fingers. What would one chance even look like? She asked. Ethan took a breath. It would look like a cup of coffee. Like a conversation where I don't run. Like me proving, day by day, that I can stand beside you instead of hiding behind excuses. And if you fail? She asked. Then you get on the next train, he said. And I won't stop you. Something inside Clara cracked open. They sat on a bench at the edge of the platform as the train doors closed behind her. Clara's suitcase rested between her feet, a silent witness to her indecision. Ethan bought her coffee from the station vendor, his hands shaking slightly as he passed it to her. They talked. Not about the past they already knew, but about the truths they had been too afraid to share. Ethan admitted how close he had come to losing the ranch, and himself. Clara spoke of the nights she cried alone, wondering if she had imagined his love. There were tears. There was silence. There was laughter, tentative but real, when Ethan spilled coffee on his shirt and cursed softly under his breath. For the first time in a long while, Clara felt seen, not as someone to be protected or pushed away, but as an equal. When the station grew quiet and the train was gone, Ethan stood. I won't ask you to decide now, he said. I meant what I said. One chance. However you want it. Clara looked up at him, at the man who had finally learned that love was not something to be earned through sacrifice alone, but through presence. Walk me home, she said. Ethan smiled, slow and careful, like someone holding something fragile. I'd like that. The months that followed were not easy. Love, Clara learned, was not a grand gesture but a series of small, deliberate choices. Ethan showed up. When things got hard, he stayed. When fear crept in, he named it instead of letting it decide for him. The town noticed the change. So did Clara. There were days she still wondered what the East might have held for her. But more often than not, she found herself grateful for the life unfolding where she was, messy, imperfect, and real. One evening, as they watched the sun dip below the horizon, Ethan took her hand. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For not leaving, he replied. And for teaching me that kindness isn't weakness, it's courage. Clara smiled, leaning into him. She thought of the train she hadn't boarded, of the chance she had taken on a man brave enough to beg for one more try. Sometimes, she realized, the most powerful journeys were the ones you chose not to take. And sometimes, hope sounded a lot like a cowboy running out of breath on a quiet station platform, asking, at last, for the chance to love without fear.